Welcome to BFCN Shorts. Today's guest is Jess Ibrom, who is here to tell us about the Pacific Island nation of Samoa. Jess, thank you for coming on. How are you doing today?
Brilliant, Will. Yeah, really, really good. It's about 9 o'clock at night here, and it's very, very hot. But yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting with yourself. Thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you for coming on. So, a 12-hour time difference. You must be somewhere very far away. Where have you come to tell us about today?
I'm actually based in the city of Apia in Samoa, which is flight duration probably about 3.5 to 4 hours east, I believe, of New Zealand.
Wow, so way out in the Pacific Ocean, quite isolated on a small island. Do you ever feel that kind of plays with your mind a bit, thinking how far away you are?
Yeah. I've often had this conversation with people in that each role I've been trying to work my way back towards Europe and the UK, but I seem to be working my way further away. You do. I mean, it's a bigger island. There's two islands here in Samoa: Apollo, the island I'm on at the moment, and Savati. Population total about 200,000, but very different to the island that I used to work at when I was technical director for the Cook Islands. There was 17,000 people on Rarotonga, the island that I lived on. So, whichever way you look at it, you do still feel quite far away from Europe.
Just so listeners can understand, there are technically two Samoas, right?
Yeah. Although different in any number of different ways. So, you've got Samoa, which is obviously where I am, and then you've got American Samoa. So yeah, completely different. Different countries, different cultures, nationalities, everything.
All right. What is it that you're doing out there?
So currently, I'm technical director for the country. So I've held the role now for 2 years. A large portion of the time that I've been within the role was obviously through COVID lockdowns. So I was stuck in New Zealand. So I was doing the role remotely. So I've been out here now for a few months. Yeah, and just trying to mobilise and work across all the different areas of football development to really drive and enhance the game as best that I can.
Now, this almost sounds stupid coming out of my mouth here, but what appealed to you about being a technical director for a federation on a beautiful Pacific island?
Yeah, I mean, I've done it before, obviously, when I was a technical director for the Cook Islands. And again, similar, I really saw the potential of the country. And the president sold it to me in terms of the vision of what he wanted to do with the country, the direction he wanted to take the federation. And yeah, just huge potential. And it was a country I'd followed since I've been in this part of the world, Oceania, for about 10 years. It was a country I followed really, really closely. So I could see the potential and thought, you know what, if I can get some good buy-in and support from the key people, that hopefully I can develop and leave it in a better place than what it was when I first arrived.
Speaking of potential, what is the football infrastructure like in Samoa?
We're actually very fortunate in comparison to a lot of member associations this part of the world. So our main federation, we've got five main football pitches. We've probably got probably close to 30 staff within the federation itself. That's on the main island of Apollo. On the other island is Savati, which is about an hour ferry ride away. We've got 3 staff, one main football pitch, futsal pitch, and then we've got a new facility that's being built, supported via FIFA, which will be 3 international standard pitches, futsal pitches, mini pitches, beach soccer. So yeah, it's going to be one of the biggest facilities within the Oceania region. So infrastructure-wise, we're very fortunate in comparison to a lot of other countries. We've got a lot of grounds in terms of actual acres of land for football.
how much of an advantage does that give Samoa over the competing nations in the area to have such good facilities?
The interesting thing for me is that having worked in these islands and been in this region on and off for a while, is that it's quite easy to mobilize activities. So what I mean by that is, in the last couple of months, managed to get in the 16s, the 19s, the 23s men, the 16s and 19s women, and you can simply just put a Facebook post up for a talent identification night the following week, and everyone will turn up. So the players will travel in through various means, and then we obviously drop them off afterwards around the main island of Apollo. So you can mobilize it quite quickly. It's not like that in every country. A lot of other countries like Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, they might be more limited in terms of infrastructure, and geographically it might be a lot more spread out. Countries like Vanuatu as well. So, but for us, everything is quite centrally located, so it's a lot easier to mobilize those activities, which is a big advantage.
I'm pretty sure I remember you at some point talking about the Cook Islands and what a challenge it was, because there were so many islands, and some of them were quite far and would take a long time traveling. Do you have that same kind of issue in Samoa, or is it easy to get around?
It's pretty easy to get around. It's a slower pace of life, other than the main Apia city. But other than that, people go a little bit slower than what I would do in Europe, which could be a good thing, or not so good thing, depending on how you approaching your day. But for Samoa, geographically, it's a lot easier than the Cook Islands, because Savatthi, the other island, like I mentioned before, it's about an hour ferry ride away. So I'm actually going over this Saturday. We have a futsal festival, so jump on a ferry, and then an hour on the ferry, you're up to the other islands, and then very quickly you're at the other federation, and away you go. So the other island of Savatthi is a lot bigger. I travelled around it the other week, and it took about 4.5 hours to go around, because we were looking for some outreach development centres to start over there. So it's a much bigger island, but smaller population.
Now, considering you've done similar roles in similar locations, I'd be interested to know, has this benefited you as a coach, and in what ways?
Yeah, definitely benefited me as a coach. I've had to adapt a lot. I think, you come from England, you're heavily ingrained in terms of how you feel potentially, the game should be played. I know the game is, developed and modernized itself quite a lot in England in recent years, which is brilliant. But most definitely I've had to adapt. I've had to simplify the way in which I approach the game and train players and train teams. It's benefited me in the way in which I feel that I'm a lot more rounded as a football coach. And I certainly don't see myself now as a coach in the UK who's coaching in a different part of the world, but still using the same methods and philosophies as what he used many moons ago. I'd say that I've just adapted myself along the way, and through these experiences of working in these islands, you don't lose your principles or values in terms of how you want to see the game played, but you certainly adapt, and you're a lot more flexible in your approaches to it. So it's been a great learning experience for me, phenomenal learning experience. And I like to think that coming here to Samoa, I don't feel that I would have been as prepared as what I would have been if I hadn't had my 2 years experience in the Cook Islands. So the perception to reality is a lot different. People from the outside looking in, they just see national team, but the reality is very, very different. And the reality for people living in these countries is very, very different.
Now, with it being so far away from home, I can't think of many places that are further when it comes to a 12-hour time difference. That must have challenged you as a person as well. So do you feel like you've grown, you've benefited much as a person, not just a coach?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll certainly say I've sort of thrived off challenging environments. They they either seem to follow me or I follow them. But I come into these different environments and they're hugely challenging. But I seem to thrive off them. It would be nice to find just something that would be a little bit more cruisy for a while, but I can't see that. And in football, you sort of accepted that that's the way in which it is. But yeah, no, I've definitely improved myself, not just as a coach, but in terms of my leadership skills, my people skills, communication skills, everything. And it's definitely made me more flexible and adaptable as a person.
You speak of challenges. What have been some of the challenges over there?
Sometimes in terms of creating some small change. We've just come into with quite a different sort of strategy in terms of our recruitment and scouting model. So over a year ago, we took this big global strategy in terms of identifying players that could represent the country, regardless of where they're from. And we've got a really great guy in Alistair who heads up our scouting and recruitment, and we found players all over the world, Europe, US, Australasia, Asia. So that's been a real positive because we realised that we needed to enhance our national teams and how we compete at international level because it hadn't really been like that previously. So that's been a challenge. I'd certainly say in terms of just adapting to the way in which the game is played. We have a lot of visitors from all over the world that come over and then they see it for themselves that, the level of football in this country is a lot lower than what it is, in comparison to a lot of other countries, certainly closer to Europe as well. So that's been a challenge to try and enhance the level of football here as much as possible.
When it comes to getting players for the national team, I think you're casting a very wide net, looking for anyone who qualifies through their lineage or whatever. Is it then hard to get them to come over and represent the national team, considering the amount of travel involved for these players?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's not just the travel, it's more the fact that previously they didn't really have credible national teams. Our rankings don't lie. We're ranked where we are. And the reason for that is because they haven't done very well. So, and that's across the board. So it's convincing players, which takes a long time. But you're actually trying to do things a little bit differently, or in a different way, because you want to enhance the national teams and you want to add greater credibility to the national teams, because it brings a bigger focus to what we're trying to do and how successful we're trying to be. So we've been fortunate. Certainly, our female side just recently we made the semi-finals in the Nations Cup. Had some big results. Not really happened. I think something like 16 debuts. We had our under-19s recently in Tahiti. Something like 18, 19 debuts. We managed to bring back a Cahill. So Tim Cahill actually represented Western Samoa back in the day when he was 14. Before he went over to Australia and become the legend that he is. So his son, Kai Cahill, actually represented our under-19s, which was massive. It was massive because, Dad was obviously born here in Samoa. So it was brilliant. So yeah, not just distance, it's just really convincing, players that are playing at a professional level in some cases, but, we're actually trying to do things right. We're trying to do things in a different way and we're trying to bring a greater standard to the way in which our national teams operate.
You mentioned that there's a slower pace of life. Did that take some adjusting to? And in what way might that present some problems?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think I've got a bit of a quick engine, so I'm used to doing, and I guess that's the way in which we're brought up in the UK as well. Yeah, you go out, you work, you graft each day, and yeah, certainly coming here, it was different. I mean, we've got some national teams going in terms of just the domestic players, playing groups, and yeah, I mean, they don't all turn up on time. That's a fact, and you have to adapt and you have to accept that. I still stick closely to my principles. I mean, I remember as an example, one of our early training sessions. I think we were due to start at 5 p.m. and it was 4:40, and we had about 10 players, but yet we were still standing around. And my question was, why are we standing around? We've got 10 players. Why don't we start the session? And so very quickly you start it, and people do adapt. People like they're like routine, and they're just good habits to get into. So that has been an adaptation for me. It's been a bit of a challenge, but now I'm fully adapted to it. And again, coming from the Cook Islands, that helped me a lot.
Let's have a look at what it's like living there. What would you say are some of the best things about living and working in Samoa?
You are exposed to sort of people's lives in a much more different way. I predominantly live in New Zealand currently, but obviously based here working. But people's lives are very, very different. I mean, this is it's a very underdeveloped country, and and they've got it tough. They've got it hard. A lot of people have in this country. It's the standard of living is a lot lower than what it is in other countries. It's been a very humbling experience for me, because you see what people have to deal with and the hardship they have to go through on a daily basis. And again, we take things for granted where we live, but it's not like that in other parts of the world, and certainly it isn't here. So it's been a very interesting journey, just seeing how people live their lives here. And you're just exposed to sort of relationships and conversations a lot quicker than what you would do if you was in more developed countries, if that makes sense. People are very honest. Here they tell it the way, they tell it the way in which it is. So it's been great. It's been a great experience in terms of just being exposed to how people live their lives here, because it's not easy for them, but they're a happy nation. And they're good fun. They're a fun bunch. Certainly my staff who I work with as well.
What were some misconceptions that you faced before going there?
Just that it's very underdeveloped. The game hasn't really done a lot. It would be difficult to affect any sort of real change within the role itself. Those were a lot of the challenges that I was told about prior to me coming into the country, but I wasn't naive. I'd done a lot of research. I know a lot of people within the region, not just within Samoa, but the other countries as well. So I spoke to a lot of people prior to me coming in, because I always think it's good, wherever you go in terms of whatever role you're taking on, you just try and research as much as you can. You talk to as many people as you can. So, I knew what I was walking into, and it was everything I expected and probably a little bit more.
So I think it was fairly easy in terms of a research point of view. Like you said, you'd worked in similar environments, you knew a lot of people. So different question altogether. What kind of things can you do for fun over there in your spare time when you're not coaching? What's available?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I work quite a lot. That's a good question. There's areas with which in the island of Apollo you can go. There's beaches, there's waterfalls, there's the usual stuff, the touristy attraction stuff. There's nice hotels, there's nice resorts. But I don't tend to have the time to go to a lot of these places, maybe once a week, because I've just thrown myself into work. And so, as a tourist destination, it's probably quite nice for tourists to come out here and just have a slower pace of life. And certainly the other island, Savati, it's a lot slower, different culture altogether for me, my experience. But for fun, I'll just go and watch more games of football, to be honest. And just maybe connect with other expats that are on the island as well. Just to get a little bit of an understanding of their lives here and how long they've been here in Samoa.
Do you feel welcome and like you're able to integrate into the society?
Yeah, definitely. I think Samoan people as such, someone like myself coming in, there's probably a little bit of a shyness initially, but then when they open up You know, the trust is there, the openness is there, the honesty is there. So yeah, you can most definitely build those relationships over time. But to start with, it might well not really feel like that if you're an outsider from the country coming in. I was told the other day, I went to the British High Commission, and then I was told there's probably about half a dozen Brits in Samoa, which is, you know, a population of about just over 200,000. So I haven't met another Brit yet, but apparently I'm one of them. But yeah, no, I mean, you do, you know, you create these bonds and relationships quite quickly with the people here. And I think it really is, as long as they see that you're here to generally help, to help them for the betterment of the game, and you're here to work, you know, because, you know, there is, you know, sometimes there's people that come to these parts of the world and their perception is a lot different to the reality of when they actually land on the ground. And you got to graft, you have to work, because if you don't, you won't last too long in a role, in all honesty.
Final question. What advice would you give to someone that is considering taking a job there?
Do as much research as possible. Speak to people on the ground. See it as an adventure. See it as something that's going to develop you as a person in so many different ways. You will be shocked in some cases of what you will be exposed to or what you will see, because it's very, very different. But you will have a phenomenal experience. And I certainly say that, you know, for every experience I've gone through, there's been some big challenges, but most definitely it's helped me a lot, and it's shaped me in a much better way for my next role as well. So yeah, don't see it as long term, because people like myself come to this part of the world, and you know, we very rarely we're in roles for a long period of time, you know, 2 to 3 years. So, you know, very rare do people, you know, stay within a role, because it's just the nature of the job. It's the nature of the, you know, the challenge of working in different countries away from, you know, your norm, if you like.
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for your insight. Really appreciate you coming on.
No, I appreciate it, Will. Thank you again, and keep up the great work. I really enjoy following the platform. It's brilliant.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us as we explore the football landscapes around the planet, informing coaches of what it's like to live and work in football in all these different locations. If you'd like to tell us about where you've been, just reach out to us. We'd love to have you on.